This is Steve Buckley for Herald Press Box. I'm in Copley Square with videographer Bob Grime. And in just under 2 weeks, thousands of finishers of the Boston Marathon will be assembling right here to get their medals and their wraps and their smiles, and they'll be heading home for lots and lots of ice. Now, chances are, given this year's marathon, you probably know someone who's in the marathon if you're not in the marathon yourself. These are two very important weeks right now, and we thought we'd talk with an expert in the field, so to speak, about what to do and what to prepare for during these last 2 weeks before the marathon. We're with Rebecca Brown. She's a physical therapist and the owner of Healthy Souls Physical Therapy. And that souls is not this soul, but these souls, correct?
Souls, yes.
So those who've been training for the marathon since December, they're less than 2 weeks away. What's your advice for these people?
So this is the period of time that they're starting to taper. So most of them have run their longest run, and now they're starting to drop back, and their body is starting to heal. And we get two types of people: people that want to keep pounding their body away to try to take a few minutes off, and people that drop way off and don't do much. What it's important to do is still move your body, still let your body run a little bit, still let your body do some cross training, but you have to keep stretching. If you don't, these past 2 weeks, your body will get stiff and rusty.
You are working with, I think, 40 marathoners?
About 40, yeah.
40 marathoners. And what about diet? What about sleep? What about going out in the town? What's the general picture?
The big thing is you can't predict what you're going to sleep the night before, and sometimes you can't even predict what you'll be able to eat the morning of. So my advice is usually 3 or 4 days ahead of time to start sleeping more, because that you have control over. As far as eating, everyone is a little bit different. My big advice is salt your food a little bit more. If you can have a little more salt in your body, it's going to make race day go better.
So we're told to avoid salt all our lives.
Toss it in, pour it in there on these ones. And also hydrating is huge. Hydrating is huge the few days before and obviously the day of. Those things are going to make your body ready for the marathon.
Okay, now as someone who's done a marathon, the night before the marathon 3 years ago, I don't think I slept at all. Is that common?
Very common, very common. And what we know is when you have 1 day of horrible sleep, the truth is it shouldn't kill your performance. That's why I say if you're tossing and turning all night, it doesn't mean you're not going to run great that next day. But if you can make those days ahead of time work, where you can sleep before you're nervous, it's going to make that night before those nerves and 2 hours of sleep, 3 hours of sleep, no big deal for your actual performance.
And one very important question is that this particular marathon, everyone's emotional when they run a marathon. This one is going to be different. What do you tell people in terms of not being too emotional, not being Bill Rogers from the start of Hopkinton, and just sort of pacing and keeping things low down?
Well, even though this year is tough, the course of Boston is so fantastic, but it is not forgiving. Exactly. So if your nerves are crazy, if your emotions are crazy, the big thing you can do is remind yourself of your plan. Really force your pacing. Don't let yourself jump out of the gate early, and remind yourself that if you do everything right, if you get your food, if you get your water, if you run at the pace you know you can run, you will have a successful marathon.
And you are running the marathon?
I am. I'll be running with my husband that day.
See you in Copley.
Sounds good. See you there, Steve.